5 telepathic signals that someone is thinking deeply about you. Psychology tips. The strongest connections don't need constant contact. They exist quietly, even when nothing is said. Have you ever felt a sudden shift in the air, as if someone stepped into your inner world without knocking? You were doing nothing special at all, reading a page, staring out a window, or sitting quietly with your own thoughts, when a familiar face appeared in your mind. Not invited, not forced, just there. Then a name followed. Soft, persistent. And suddenly a feeling arrived. Warm, heavy, or strangely comforting. It touched your chest before logic had a chance to speak. You paused. You wondered why this moment felt different, why it carried weight, why it refused to be ignored. That is not randomness. Don't dismiss it. Don't rush past it, because that is a telepathic signal. A quiet psychological bridge between two people who remain connected beneath the surface, even when life has pulled them apart. Psychology tips often point to this subtle truth. Focused thought carries energy, and emotion gives it direction. When someone thinks deeply about you, with attention, memory, and unresolved feeling, that energy looks for you. It finds you. It makes itself known. Be aware of how your body reacts in these moments. The calm, the ache, the sudden clarity. That response is part of the signal. You must understand this is not about fantasy or illusion. This is about human connection, emotional resonance, the way the subconscious speaks when words fall short. That is why these moments arrive unannounced. That is why they surface during silence, when your mind is open and unguarded. Love advice grounded in psychology tips reminds us to notice patterns, not isolated moments. When the same person appears again and again with emotional force, it reveals a loop of attention that has not been closed. Don't overthink it. Don't chase it. But don't ignore it either. Observe it. Respect it. Let it teach you how deeply human connection can travel without a single message being sent. Because love advice that truly matters is rarely loud or dramatic. It is quiet, persistent, deeply felt. And when someone is thinking about you this way, their mind is reaching out, asking to be acknowledged, asking to be understood. Psychology tips leave us with one clear truth you must remember. What you feel without explanation is often the most honest signal of all. Pause for a moment and breathe. Notice what has been quietly pulling at your attention lately, because when someone is thinking about you deeply, that energy does not stay silent. It reaches out and finds you. This is not imagination or wishful thinking. Psychology tips remind us that focused thought always leaves a trace, even across distance. You may not fully understand what you are feeling yet, but you can feel it, and that matters. What comes next are not coincidences. They are signals. Let's begin. 1. You sense their energy without warning. It arrives quietly. No noise. No announcement. There are moments in life that don't come with explanations. No clear reason. No obvious trigger. Nothing you can point to and say, "This is why I feel this way." Your day begins normal, stable, quiet. You feel centered in yourself. Nothing is wrong. Nothing is missing. And then, without warning, something shifts inside you. A sudden heaviness settles in your chest. A soft warmth spreads through your body. A calm arrives that wasn't there seconds ago. Or a sadness surfaces that doesn't belong to your present moment. You pause, confused, not because the feeling is strong, but because it has no source. That's when you realize something important. This feeling didn't come from you. It didn't grow out of your thoughts. It wasn't triggered by memory, stress, or exhaustion. It didn't originate in your life at all. It came from somewhere else, from someone else. When a person thinks about you with real depth, not casually, not briefly, but with emotion that carries weight, those thoughts don't stay confined to their mind. Thoughts charged with love, longing, regret, or unresolved emotion carry energy. And energy doesn't sit still. It moves. It reaches outward. When two people once shared an emotional rhythm, when they understood each other beyond words, that rhythm doesn't simply disappear because time passed or silence grew. Emotional connections don't dissolve on command. Distance doesn't mute them. Silence doesn't erase them. Instead, they linger beneath the surface, quiet but alive. You may feel this connection physically before you understand it mentally. A gentle heat spreading across your chest, like your heart is opening without effort. A subtle pull inside your body, almost electrical in nature. Sometimes it arrives as a soft heaviness, other times as an unexpected sense of peace. It can feel like someone stepped into your emotional space without knocking. Don't rush to push it away. Don't immediately explain it off. Just be present with it. In spiritual language, this is often described as empathic resonance. In practical terms, it means your emotional system is responding to a signal it didn't create. This is one of those psychological experiences that rarely gets discussed, not because it isn't real, but because it requires awareness instead of noise. Imagine this. You're alone in the evening. The room is quiet. The outside world has slowed down. Your mind isn't focused on anyone in particular. You aren't searching. You aren't reminiscing. And then suddenly, their face appears in your thoughts. Clear, sharp, uninvited. Emotion rises instantly. You smile without knowing why, or your throat tightens. Your chest feels full. Your body reacts before logic has time to intervene. Your breathing changes. Your heart subtly adjusts its rhythm. For a brief moment, you feel close to them, closer than distance should allow. That is the first signal of emotional energy crossing space. When someone thinks about you with enough intensity, their emotion creates a current. And that current doesn't follow physical rules. It moves through memory, connection, and shared emotional history. Your deeper awareness recognizes it even when your mind wants to remain skeptical. It feels like tuning into a frequency you forgot existed. These experiences often happen during quiet moments for a reason. Early mornings, late nights, times when your guard is down. When distractions fade, perception sharpens. Your internal awareness becomes more sensitive, and in that stillness, you receive more than you expect. Don't rush to rationalize it away. Be honest about what you felt. That feeling carried meaning. Many people, especially men, are taught to dismiss experiences like this, to demand proof, to override intuition, to ignore internal signals unless they can be measured or explained. But real psychological insight and honest emotional wisdom don't ask you to deny your inner world. They ask you to observe it calmly. Here's something important to understand. Sensing someone's energy does not mean you are stuck in the past. It does not mean you are weak, attached, or unable to move forward. It means you are aware. It means your emotional intelligence is intact. Your capacity to feel deeply hasn't been shut down. And that awareness is not a flaw, it's a strength. Notice the feeling. Acknowledge it. Let it move through you naturally. Don't cling to it. But don't deny it either. Because when someone is thinking about you with depth, real depth, their emotions don't stay confined to their own inner world. Sometimes they cross the quiet distance and touch yours. And your heart responds long before your mind begins asking questions. That is an imagination. That is connection. And understanding this may be one of the most overlooked insights in psychology and one of the most grounded, honest forms of emotional wisdom you'll ever encounter. 2. You see signs, patterns, or repeating synchronicities. Dear friend, when you begin to notice signs, patterns, and repeating synchronicities in your life, it is worth pausing and paying attention. These moments are not random background noise, and they are not meaningless coincidences. They carry precision. They carry timing. And most importantly, they carry information. When another person is thinking about you consistently, with emotional intensity and focus, that mental activity does not remain confined inside their head. Sustained thought creates momentum, and momentum leaves traces in the external world. This is often how it starts. Numbers begin repeating 1111, 222, 333, appearing again and again, not once or twice, but persistently. A name you were not looking for shows up in unexpected places, on a screen, in a book, in a conversation that has nothing to do with them. A song tied to shared memories plays at the exact moment your emotional defenses are lowered. Dreams become vivid, emotionally charged, and difficult to forget, lingering long after you wake. These experiences feel pointed, almost deliberate, because they are experienced that way by the mind. This is not fantasy or magical thinking. This is alignment. The human mind is wired to recognize meaning when internal and external events overlap with precision. Modern psychology acknowledges this phenomenon as meaningful coincidence, moments where events align in ways that go beyond simple probability. When coincidence repeats with emotional weight and accuracy, the mind does not dismiss it easily because the pattern feels personal. The mind does not operate in isolation. Thought carries direction. Emotion carries force. When direction and force combine, patterns begin to emerge. Focus shapes perception, and perception shapes experience. Reality reflects sustained attention. Reality responds to intensity. This is why emotionally charged connections leave lasting imprints, even after physical contact ends. When two people have shared something genuine, something layered with emotion, memory, and meaning, that connection does not simply vanish with time. It transforms. It quiets down. It moves into the background. And then, often unexpectedly, it resurfaces through signals, through reminders you did not ask for, through mirrors placed in ordinary moments. You try to move forward, yet everything seems to point backward. Their favorite color suddenly appears everywhere. A phrase they once used comes out of a stranger's mouth. A familiar scent cuts through the air without warning. These experiences are not punishment, and they are not traps. They are resonance. They indicate that something unfinished still exists in the psychological field you once shared. The mind, once expanded by emotional experience, does not shrink back to its former state. Neither does the heart. Especially in modern life, where distractions are constant, silence is rare, and reflection is often avoided, the mind uses symbols to communicate when direct contact is absent. Symbols are efficient. They bypass resistance. That is why these moments feel intimate. They're experienced as personal because they originate in personal memory and emotion. Somewhere, someone is revisiting you internally, thinking, replaying, reflecting. That internal activity does not stay contained. It presses outward. The environment becomes the messenger. This does not mean action is required, but it does mean awareness is useful. One of the most valuable psychological insights you can receive in these moments is this: do not rush to label everything as coincidence. Coincidence does not repeat with precision. Coincidence does not arrive layered with emotional charge. Coincidence does not persist over time. Patterns do. Signals do. Meaningful repetition does. The lesson here is not obsession. It is recognition. Recognition restores clarity. Clarity restores control. And control gives you choice. Instead of reacting with confusion or nostalgia, you can respond with grounded awareness. For men navigating relationships, memory, and unresolved emotional connections, this awareness is essential. There is no need to panic. There is no need to romanticize blindly. Strength comes from staying grounded. Ask yourself what the signal is pointing toward. Is it closure? Is it action? Is it acceptance? Or is it discipline? The discipline to let the pattern inform you without pulling you backward? You have power over your mind, even when you do not control external events. The signal does not command you. It informs you. It sharpens awareness. It gives you data. What you do with that data is where maturity shows itself. In a world driven by speed, distraction, and constant noise, these patterns serve as reminders to slow down and observe. Someone's thoughts reach you because thought seeks completion. Emotional energy seeks resolution. That does not mean reunion is required. It means understanding is required. Real strength lies in deciding how you meet these moments, with wisdom rather than impulse, with restraint rather than fantasy, with intention rather than reaction. Use these experiences as psychological information, not emotional chaos. Let them refine you. Let them clarify your next move, not anchor you to the past. The universe rarely shouts. It repeats. And repetition is instruction. Stay observant. Stay steady. This is how quiet mastery is built. This is how you remain in command of your inner world while understanding the unseen connections shaping your outer one. 3. You feel an unseen presence, like they're spiritually near. The third, and perhaps the most powerful, telepathic signal is the sensation of an unseen presence, the quiet but unmistakable feeling that someone is near you even when no one is physically there. This experience often arrives without warning. It can feel like a subtle shift in the atmosphere, a sudden pause in your thoughts, or a moment where your awareness sharpens for no obvious reason. You may feel goosebumps rise across your skin, not from fear, but from a sense of warmth or familiarity. You might even feel an instinctive urge to turn around, fully expecting to see them standing behind you. And when you do not, the feeling does not vanish. It lingers, calm, intimate, and undeniable. Do not dismiss this too quickly. Slow down. Be still. This is not randomness. Psychology teaches us that the mind is far more perceptive than we often allow ourselves to believe, especially when emotion is involved. Thought is not static, and emotion does not remain contained within one individual. When someone thinks about you deeply, emotionally, spiritually, or romantically, that focused attention carries energy. That energy does not stop at physical distance. It moves. It arrives. It settles. It leaves an imprint, almost like a quiet visit that communicates without words, "I'm thinking of you," or "You still matter to me." You may notice this sensation most clearly when your mind is relaxed and unguarded, during moments of calm reflection, meditation, or when you are drifting between sleep and waking. In these states, the noise of logic softens. The defenses of the conscious mind loosen. Your inner awareness becomes receptive. This is when connection is strongest, when the analytical mind steps aside and something deeper listens. Awareness sharpens not because you are trying to sense something, but because you are no longer blocking it. Do not rush to explain the experience away. Stay present with it. Strong emotional bonds create lasting psychological and energetic connections, especially when love was genuine or separation was painful. Psychology reminds us that unresolved emotional ties do not simply disappear with time. They do not dissolve. They transform. They move quietly beneath the surface, shaping perception, memory, and awareness while waiting for moments of openness to rise again. Sometimes this connection expresses itself through dreams, vivid, emotionally rich experiences where you encounter the other person as if no time has passed. The interaction feels natural, unforced, real. You may wake with a strange certainty that something meaningful occurred, something more than a simple replay of memory. The emotional clarity that follows, the calm, the longing, the sense of closeness, can feel sharper and more grounded than ordinary dreams. These dreams leave residue. They stay with you throughout the day. Do not label this as imagination too quickly. Imagination tends to be fragmented and unstable. These experiences feel cohesive. They feel intentional. They carry emotional coherence rather than chaos. That is not coincidence. That is a meeting of awareness. When two minds have been deeply connected, especially through shared vulnerability or emotional intensity, that connection can express itself beyond conscious thought. Energy shaped by deep care does not disappear. It circulates. It seeks balance. And when someone thinks of you with sustained intensity, that energy can surround you like an invisible presence, a silent reassurance rather than noise, a quiet acknowledgement rather than intrusion. It does not demand your attention. It simply makes itself known. There is no need to fear this sensation. Stay grounded. Psychology-based love advice teaches that sensitivity is not weakness. It is awareness. Awareness allows you to recognize when a connection still exists, even if circumstances, distance, or time have changed. Strength lies in your ability to observe without becoming consumed, to feel without becoming attached. The signal itself is not a command. It does not require action. It does not ask you to chase the past or reopen wounds. It is information. It tells you that the bond was real. It tells you that it left a mark. It confirms that the human mind and heart are capable of reaching farther than logic alone can fully explain. Mature awareness means allowing the feeling to pass through you without resistance and without obsession. Let it inform you, not control you. Let it remind you of depth, not distract you from direction. You are not meant to live inside the signal. You are meant to understand it. Be calm. Be observant. The quiet presence you feel is the third telepathic sign. Recognizing it does not mean you are trapped in memory. It means you acknowledge the depth of a connection that once existed and the subtle ways it can still echo through your awareness. Sometimes that echo brings insight. Sometimes it brings closure. Sometimes it simply offers understanding that certain connections leave impressions long after words are gone, and that awareness, when held with discipline and clarity, becomes strength rather than confusion. For your intuition becomes unusually sharp when it comes to them. There are moments when you are not trying to think about them at all, yet you know. Not through logic, not through memory. You simply know. Calmly, cleanly. Your intuition sharpens the instant their name drifts through your inner space, and it feels less like effort and more like recognition. You sense their sadness without evidence. You sense their attention without a message. You sense movement inside them even when everything on the surface is still. This is not guessing. Guessing carries tension. Guessing rushes. Guessing demands proof. Intuition does none of that. It arrives quietly. It settles without noise. It does not argue its case. It just stands there, steady and complete. Psychology tips often explain this as subconscious awareness shaped by deep emotional connection, but that phrase barely captures the experience. When two people have truly shared understanding, not just conversation, not just time, but resonance, the mind learns their emotional patterns the way the body learns balance. You must understand this clearly. The brain does not stop listening just because words stop arriving. It keeps track. It notices shifts. It remembers tone, rhythm, presence. Over time, it becomes fluent in signals that never pass through speech. That is why you can recognize a familiar person entering a room by the sound of their breath alone, before your eyes confirm it. The body knows first. The mind follows. Do not confuse this with imagination. Imagination is loud. It pushes. It demands action. Intuition does not. Be precise here. Intuition never pressures you. It never creates urgency. It never pulls you into spirals of overthinking. That is how you tell the difference. Intuition clarifies. It steadies. It sharpens your awareness without stealing your peace. That is why it does not make you anxious. That is why it does not make you lose control. That is why it leaves you clearer than before. When someone is thinking about you with emotional depth, the connection activates a subtle layer of perception within you, and you feel it not because you are searching, but because you are listening. Be still enough, and it becomes obvious. Do not chase signs. Do not interrogate every thought. Do not turn quiet knowing into restless interpretation. That is not intuition's job. Your job is to notice. That is all. Psychology tips and love advice often miss this point by overcomplicating it, by turning something natural into something mystical or dramatic. This experience is neither. It is grounded. It is human. It is the result of shared emotional history leaving traces in the nervous system. When the connection was real, the imprint remains. And when the other person turns inward and thinks of you deeply, that imprint responds. Not with fireworks, with clarity. That is the key detail most people overlook. True intuition feels ordinary in the best possible way. It feels like truth that does not need decoration. You must trust the calmness of it. You must trust the lack of urgency. You must trust how it does not ask you to act, react, or reach out. It simply informs you. That is why mature love advice emphasizes emotional regulation rather than obsession. Awareness without attachment. Knowing without grasping. Presence without pursuit. If you are unsettled, it is not intuition. If you are frantic, it is not intuition. If you feel grounded, composed, and quietly certain, that is it. That is the signal. And when this happens, when your intuition sharpens specifically around one person, it is not coincidence. It is connection expressing itself at a deeper frequency. You are not invading their mind. You are not reading thoughts. You are responding to a shared emotional language learned over time. Psychology tips describe this as subconscious attunement, but lived experience describes it more simply. You feel them because you once understood each other deeply. And that understanding does not disappear just because silence arrives. It changes form. It moves underground. It speaks softly. Be attentive. Be honest with yourself. Do not dramatize it. Do not dismiss it either. That balance is where wisdom lives. And that is how you recognize the difference between fleeting thoughts and genuine telepathic signals shaped by emotional depth, experience, and real human connection. 5. You feel a quiet sense of completion or readiness after the signal passes. This is the final sign, and it is the one most people miss. After the feeling arrives, after the memory rises, after the invisible presence brushes against you without warning, everything softens. No chaos, no mental noise, no urge to act right now. That absence matters. What replaces it is subtle but unmistakable. A sense of closure. A gentle click as if something has been acknowledged and filed where it belongs. Like a letter finally read and placed back in its envelope. The energy ran its course. It didn't linger. It didn't demand more. You breathe deeper. Your shoulders loosen. Your mind returns to the present without effort. That is how you know the signal has completed its work. Psychology tells us something important here. When an emotional cycle is fully recognized, without avoidance and without clinging, the brain releases the tension tied to it. No drama required. No follow-up necessary. The system resets on its own. You don't need to act. You don't need to reach out. You don't need to explain. Understanding has already happened. This is where many people get it wrong. They assume that if someone is thinking about them, there must be a response. A message. A move. A reopening of old doors. But emotional maturity often looks like the opposite. It looks like knowing when stillness is the right answer. Don't rush. Don't chase meaning where it has already settled. Be present. Not every connection asks to be continued. Not every signal calls for a reply. Some exist only to confirm one simple truth: what once mattered was real. That's it. And when you can feel that truth without losing your balance, you've reached a high level of inner control. This is not indifference. It's clarity. The difference is everything. This is where feelings stop running the show. This is where memories loosen their grip. This is where you stand steady, awake, and grounded. Telepathic signals don't arrive to pull you back into the past. They arrive to test whether you're clear enough to move forward. If you remain calm after the signal fades, that calm is the message. Now let's slow this down and make it practical, especially for men who've lived long enough to know that emotions don't announce themselves with warning labels. At this stage of life, you've carried responsibility. You've made hard calls. You've learned that not every thought deserves your reaction. This sign respects that wisdom. It doesn't shout. It doesn't push. It simply arrives, does its job, and leaves. Think of it like the echo after a bell rings. The sound fades, but you're changed by having heard it. You don't chase the echo. You let it dissolve. That is emotional intelligence in action. Modern psychology tips often focus on action, communicate, process, express. All useful tools when timing is right. But timing is everything. This sign is about restraint, about knowing that awareness alone can complete a cycle. Be honest with yourself. If the signal passes and you feel settled, that's not avoidance. That is resolution. This is especially important when it comes to love advice. Many men are taught that love requires constant movement. Fix something. Prove something. Do something. But deep connection also respects silence. It respects completion. Ask yourself one clear question: do I feel pulled or do I feel whole? If you feel whole, don't disturb that state. You must understand this. Peace after a signal is not emptiness. It is integration. The mind has processed the experience. The nervous system has stood down. The lesson, whatever it was, has landed. And here's the part most people overlook. This readiness you feel isn't about them. It's about you. Readiness to stay present. Readiness to choose wisely. Readiness to move forward without carrying unnecessary weight. That's strength defined quietly. In psychology, tips aimed at long-term emotional health, this moment is gold. It means you're no longer driven by unresolved loops. You're responding, not reacting. That shift changes everything, from how you handle relationships to how you sleep at night. Let's be clear. Don't confuse calm with lack of feeling. Don't confuse stillness with distance. Be precise with your inner language. This is completion, not suppression. And when it comes to love advice, this sign is a reminder that connection doesn't always mean continuation. Sometimes it means acknowledgement, respect, and release all in one breath. That ability grows with experience, with age, with reflection. So if the signal comes, if the memory flickers, if the presence passes through your awareness and afterward you feel steady, that is confirmation. You're not being pulled backward. You're being checked for clarity. And if you remain composed, no urgency, no confusion, that's the clearest signal of all. You are in control of yourself. Dear friend, and here's how you know it's real and not something your imagination cooked up, because that question matters and you deserve a grounded answer. You might ask yourself, how can I be sure this isn't just in my head? Be honest. That question alone shows awareness. Imagination is deliberate. It requires effort. You choose it. You guide it. But when a thought crashes into your awareness without permission, when it arrives fully formed and pulls emotion from your chest or sends a quiet signal through your body, that is different. That is not something you planned. Don't dismiss that distinction. Be clear about it. True telepathic experiences arrive unannounced. They show up on ordinary days, when you weren't reminiscing, when nothing reminded you, when life was simply moving along. And yet there it is. A sudden warmth, a heaviness, a sense of closeness you can't explain. You may try to brush it aside. Don't. It lingers anyway. It hides in a lyric on the radio. It slips into a dream. It waits for you in silence. That is because real telepathic energy is felt, not forced, and psychology tips often remind us that what the mind cannot manufacture, the body still recognizes. Be present. Acknowledge it. That is when it softens. Now here's the deeper layer most people miss. We are not only physical beings moving through time, we are energetic beings leaving traces behind us. Every meaningful bond creates a quiet exchange of frequency, a shared rhythm that doesn't disappear just because circumstances change. When you genuinely care about someone, something of you stays with them, and something of them stays with you. That connection doesn't end neatly. It fades slowly, if at all. Sometimes these moments surface to remind you that someone still holds love for you, or that forgiveness is waiting to be offered, or that closure is finally within reach. Don't panic when this happens. Don't romanticize it either. Be grounded. These signals are not meant to pull you backward. They are meant to wake you up. They ask you to notice what still needs attention, what still carries meaning, and what can finally be released with clarity. That is the balance psychology tips and love advice often point toward, but rarely explains so simply. Love leaves impressions. Energy remembers. And when something real reaches for your awareness, it does so with purpose. Be calm. Be honest with yourself. You must understand this. Telepathic signals are not about obsession or fantasy. They're about awareness, growth, and emotional truth. Let them teach you. Let them pass through you. And when the message is clear, move forward with steadiness, wisdom, and self-respect, because love advice at its best doesn't trap you in yesterday. It helps you walk confidently into what comes next. And then when you feel that quiet inner signal, the sudden pull on your awareness, the unspoken presence of someone thinking deeply about you, the instruction is simple and firm. Do not panic and do not spiral into analysis, because clarity never comes from mental noise. It comes from stillness. Slow your breathing. Settle your body. Let your mind stand at attention. Then ask yourself, with discipline and honesty, what you are actually feeling right now, because emotion is the language of the subconscious and awareness is the doorway to control. Notice what memory rises without force. Notice whether the sensation feels calm or weighted. Calm is a signal of care, respect, or unresolved affection reaching you across distance. Weight is not a threat. It is unfinished emotion seeking resolution. As Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This is where real psychology tips matter. You do not respond with words. You respond with intention. You send steadiness. You send clarity. You silently acknowledge the connection and release it with peace, because mastery comes from alignment, not attachment. This is love advice for modern men navigating complex emotional landscapes in a hyper-connected world where thoughts travel faster than messages and energy speaks louder than text. Do not chase meaning. Command it. Do not absorb what is not yours. Redirect it. As Marcus Aurelius reminded us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. That power is exercised here. Stay grounded. Stay composed. Stay deliberate. When you meet these moments with calm authority, you sharpen intuition, strengthen emotional intelligence, and move through life unburdened and victorious. These psychology tips are not about fantasy. They're about awareness, control, and self-respect. This love advice is about leadership of the inner world. Master this, and you master yourself. Don't panic when this happens. Don't romanticize it either. Be grounded. These signals are not meant to pull you backward. They are meant to wake you up. They ask you to notice what still needs attention, what still carries meaning, and what can finally be released with clarity. That is the balance psychology tips and love advice often point toward but rarely explain so simply. Love leaves impressions. Energy remembers. And when something real reaches for your awareness, it does so with purpose. Be calm. Be honest with yourself. You must understand this. Telepathic signals are not about obsession or fantasy. They're about awareness, growth, and emotional truth. Let them teach you. Let them pass through you 51, and when the message is clear, move forward with steadiness, wisdom, and self-respect, because love advice at its best doesn't trap you in yesterday. It helps you walk confidently into what comes next. The beauty of an invisible connection. Isn't it beautiful to know that even in silence, someone's energy can still find you? No words. No signals on a screen. Just a quiet pull. That is not coincidence. That is connection. Distance doesn't cancel real emotion. Time doesn't erase it. Silence doesn't weaken it. When a bond is built on something genuine, it moves differently. It travels without sound. It shows up when you least expect it. A song plays at the exact right moment. A memory rises for no clear reason. A calm, heavy feeling settles in your chest. Be aware. That is not random. When you feel these telepathic signals, take them as a gift, not a burden. Don't overthink them. Don't rush to explain them away. Be still. Let them arrive. They mean your inner world brushed against someone else's in a way that goes deeper than conversation. That is something the universe itself seems to respect. Someone may be thinking deeply about you right now. They may not call. They may not write. They may never say it out loud. But their thoughts still move. They travel through music that suddenly feels personal, through dreams that feel vivid and close, through emotional waves that arrive without warning. That is the power of unseen love. Quiet, steady, real. Don't chase proof. Don't demand certainty. Be grounded instead. These moments are not about control. They are about awareness. Psychology tips often remind us that the mind and emotions are more connected than we're taught to believe. Love advice for men especially comes down to this. Trust what you feel, but stay balanced. That is strength. Pay attention. Stay open. Respect the silence. Because sometimes, the deepest connections speak without a single word. Here's something important to remember. Telepathic signals aren't magic tricks or fantasies. They're signs of how deeply connected humans really are. When you feel a sudden emotion, a quiet pull toward someone, or a strange coincidence that won't leave your mind, don't rush to dismiss it. Pause. Breathe. Trust what you're sensing. The real advice here is simple and grounded. Pay attention to your inner world. Your thoughts, emotions, and intuition are constantly giving you information. When you learn to listen calmly instead of reacting impulsively, you become more aware, more centered, and more confident in your relationships and in yourself. Connection doesn't always need words. Sometimes it moves through energy, through love, through the silent language of the soul. And when you respect that silence, you also learn to respect yourself. So take care of your mind, protect your energy, and stay open, but stay grounded. If someone is thinking deeply about you, let it remind you of your worth, not your doubts. Thanks for watching. Stay mindful, stay strong, and I'll see you in the next video.